To the Life Burst podcast set review, Changing Diva, that's 02. This is going to be the last one we're reviewing. It's the pieces. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. We'll try to view it from a lens of teams, as well as potential dream teams, because these ones are not necessarily worth breaking teams for, but it is worth mentioning that these are ones that you can actually break teams for. So the first one we've got is Illusions and Lightning. It costs 2 colorless. It's a green and white piece with the following conditions: that you've got to have a white L-rig and a green L-rig on your field. It's got the main phase timing and the attack phase timing. It has target. You can choose one of the following. Target Signy on your field gets plus 5,000 power till end of turn, or 2. If it's your opponent's turn, target Signy gains Shadow until end of turn. So here's the deal, right? Plus 5,000's pretty large. Normally you get increments of 3,000. So plus 5,000 can do quite a few things. Are any of them good? I don't know if that's true. I don't necessarily think I want to be using my piece, right? Something that I'm basically building my deck around, or it's a linchpin of my deck, to only give 5,000 buff to one of my creatures. That feels like that's something that I would prefer to do with, like, just random level 2s or level 3s on my field, to try to do that kind of thing. If it's really something I want constantly, like, for example, with ATS sort of teams, then you're going to want it more on a permanent status, and that's things like your center L-rig. So the plus 5,000 power is not super fantastic, and then there's also the Shadow. Now, if this was able to give Shadow as a spell cut-in timing, or like basically you can use it whenever, like in Magic the Gathering, to almost counter a spell, then this would be much higher on the rankings than it currently is. The main issue with this is its main phase, so you can't use it on your main phase because it specifically says it needs to be on your opponent's turn, and you can't use things main phase timing on their turn. And the attack timing, if it's on their turn, they'll already have done the things that they need to do before you have the defense area of you do things second on the attack phase timing. So because of that, this never has good timing. It just doesn't. You will. I promise you, the Shadow will never matter. So you are only ever going to use the plus 5,000 in attack power. So then, if I was going to give this a rating, it would be unplayable. I don't think you'd ever want to play this, and I don't think that's going to change in the future. Moving on, we've got oh gosh, here we go. Itin Tapa. It's a cost of 2, colorless. Its use conditions is that you need to have a red L-rig on your field and a blue L-rig on your field, and you can choose up to 2 of the following. So this is modular, and you can pick 2 of them. Vanish target Signy on your opponent's field with 8,000 power or less. Your opponent chooses a card from their enter zone and puts it into their trash. Your opponent discards a card at random, and then you can also draw a card. Any combo of these is worth the 2 enter on this effect. Now, it doesn't scream anything other than utility. It's not pushing you in a certain direction. It's not giving you something overtly powerful. The power of this specific piece comes from the fact that it is it's flexible. Now, it's only got the main phase timing, so it's not so flexible that you can use it on your opponent's turn and start really eking a serious advantage out of it. But if you're an aggressive deck, right, there's never anything wrong with vanishing an opponent's Signy and then drawing a card. Or if you're an aggressive deck, vanishing an opponent's Signy and then putting something enter into their trash so they can't do their assist grows, or even making them discard a card at random so that way you can try to hit maybe a guard with it. If you are a more tempo-based deck, then drawing a card tacked onto any of those things is fantastic. And if you are a control-ish deck, right, a more leaned probably into a blue slower thing, then opening up a Signy hole for you to attack through is good. And then the other 3 abilities all have uses to sort of create a window. I think it's much better in tempo, but you're also playing red and blue, and generally a red and blue deck is going to be more tempoed than not. I'm going to put this one down as playable. I don't think you'll always see it, and it's never a draw. There's nothing drawing you to this. But if you are in a dream team and you need a piece, this is something you should consider, I think. We've got Azor Black Gaia. This piece costs 3. It has the main phase timing. Its use condition is that you have to have a blue Elrig and a black Elrig. So that's just only one team currently, unless you do team break for it. And the ability is your opponent discards 2 cards at random, then add up to 2 cards without guard from your trash to your hand, whose level total equals the number of total levels of Signies that were discarded this way. It's a fancy way of saying if they discard a level 3 and a spell, you can either pick up a level 1 and a level 1, a level 1 and a level 2, or a level 3 only and put it into your hand. Any sort of breaks of that sort of thoughts, right? If they do a level 1 and a level 1, you can bring a level 1 to your hand, or you can do a level 2 into your hand. So we have to really look at this one in terms of enter cost and decide if it's worth it, right? If you only see this as a draw 2, 3 enter to draw 2 is way overcosted. If this is your opponent discards 2 cards at random, which it always will be, that's at least worth 1 enter, as we've established with things like random drain. And random drain draws you cards too, so that's actually probably the best example we can do, is that this is going to cost, this is basically going to be 2 random drains in one. Is that worth 3 enter? And I think the answer is yes. Random drain is very good. Random drain shows up in almost every controlling blue deck, period, even if it's not on the correct team, to make the random discard happen. So the fact that you are getting at least 2 good worths of enter because you're making them discard 2 cards, you're drawing 2 cards, aka the equivalent of 2 random drains, I think that is pretty good. Yes, it's overcosted by 1 at that point, and I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I'm in forever now because of this. And you could do this. Now Madoka, the deck Madoka, likes seeing the opponent discard, and it actually gets an enter from it. You get to enter charge with it. So this becomes a draw for that kind of deck. Now, personally, I like Chime of the Blessed Key to go with some of Madoka's Signies that they play, and then Salvage the Future is too good to pass up, so I'm not playing this. However, in the Japanese meta, when you pull up the Madoka decks during this time frame, right, from 0-3 and beginning, it's about 50-50 as to whether they play Chime or whether they play this. So this is very playable. I wouldn't necessarily call it a staple, but it's playable. Heaven's Door. I have some serious thoughts about Heaven's Door. It wins the anime fight at the very end of the anime. Spoilers. But its ability is main phase timing. It's costs 3 enter. Its use conditions is that you have to have 7 or more angels in your trash, and the ability is put target Signy on your opponent's field into their trash. Draw 2 cards. Now, is this ability worth it for 3 enter, 3 colorless enter? And the answer is yes. Right? Usually, you'll pay about 2. Realistically, 3 is the correct rate to pay to put something in a trash, right? But it's not a good rate. It's the correct rate. So you want better than that. So 2 is normally the correct rate for that kind of effect. And then drawing 2 cards is usually worth 1.5 enter. So realistically, you're getting a discount of about a half an enter here. If this costed 4, it would be probably too much. Costing 2 would be too little. 3 is a sweet spot, and I think it's okay there. The effect is good. But the problem is the use condition. The use condition is that you have to have 7 or more angel Signy in your trash, which means that you are able to use it later in the game. However, there are better draws, right? In order to get 7 angels in your trash and realistically do it by turn 3 or 4 every game, you need to be playing angels, not anything else. You need to be playing an angel deck. Now, if I were to say, hey, you can have a 3 mana draw 2, 3 enter draw 2, and make the opponent trash a Signy as one of your pieces, instead of a team piece because you're playing all angels? The answer is that's not a great draw. You want more out of your things to break teams. And yeah, you don't really need to break teams for for angels, but there's no clean team that the angels go into on their own. So you usually are breaking teams. So I'm getting a little out of myself there. But when we're going to compare this to Xenocluster in a second, there's just better options to have as your second piece in that case. So this isn't a huge draw into angels for me personally. If I'm going to rate it, I'm going to rate it as barely playable. It is good, but the requirement of basically forcing you down an angel's deck building requirement is a very real one, and I don't know if this is the greatest payoff for it. Xenocluster, however, let's just be clear before we even get into it, it is a staple. It is used dramatically by about 50% of the entire Japanese meta. It's something that, like, you're going to want just to have around for your deck. You might swap it out occasionally. There might be some decks that just are too packed on the piece area, but this is going to be always, it'll never be bad in your deck. And oftentimes, for some of these decks, it's very, very good against them. So it's a piece. It costs 0. It has only attack phase timing, and that is important to recognize. You cannot use this to just draw some extra cards and hopefully fix your hand for your main phase. You can only do it during the attack phase. You can choose one of the following. You can draw a card, or you can enter charge 1. Now, if the opponent has made you discard it all, or if the opponent has made you lose any enter, right? They enter burned you, and you chose one of those options, then instead of doing 1, you do 3, right? So you draw 3 cards if you've discarded a card this turn, 1 or more cards. If you got enter burned for 1 or more, you then enter charge 3. This ends up being very, very good against select groupings of decks, and then very bad against other select groupings of decks. It is very good against, for example, No Limit, where they have some amount of enter burn in their options, or discard in their options through Ray. It's also very good against Madoka, and to an extent Musica if they're using discard effects, and also Uchu no Hajimari. If you're playing against those often, this card can blow them out of the water. And it only gets better because there's more discard effects, and Enterburn stays as one of those things that's sort of always on the peripherals, but is a useful tool against aggro decks. So this one single piece can turn aggro decks and control decks into more favorable matches on its own, at the cost of a piece, and then not being so great against certain mid-range strategies or combo strategies. So like Sambaka, it's not very good against Karjaki, it's not very good against. So this card still, however, remains a staple because of flexibility. You can play a very powerful team piece and then just have this on the side as something that you use if it comes up. And if it doesn't, you toss it away to draw a card during some random attack phase to hopefully get a card. Or you use it as an enter charge in order to power up one of your attack abilities or something. So this should be something that you pick up regardless. We're going to talk about another one that's kind of weird, but also maybe worth picking up. It's called End of Turn. It costs 0 enter. You can choose one of the following. You can either counter the effect of a spell whose combined cost is 3 or less. So most spells are going to be combined cost of 3 or less, unless they're stupidly expensive spells from set 0/0, and those aren't good. Or you can add target Signy without a guard from your trash to your hand. So it lets you basically recur at least 1 Signy. So equivalent of basically draw 1. The cool thing is, though, it has main phase timing, right? In case you need to put something from your trash to your hand, so that way you can fill out your Signy field. But it's got spell cut in. This is the only thing that has spell cut in so far. And that means it can interrupt spells, right? And that means you can shut down Burning Inferno, Deafening Inferno from No Limit or aggro decks. It lets you shut down a Random Drain from the control-ish decks, and it lets you shut down some removal spells from some of the other decks that are less important. something interesting is that you can shut down a good dig, and that's often vital to early game strategy. So if you call it correctly and you shut one of those things down, you might be able to just open up Signy holes because the card jockey player is not able to find the correct level Signies to put this stuff out because their deck requirement's so strange. This, like Xenocluster, but less powerful than Xenocluster, is super flexible. You can put it in your side, you can put it in your L-Rig deck, and it will do a good job when it comes up. And when it doesn't come up, it's just going to sit there and basically draw you an extra card at some point. I would rate this as playable because it's something you can consider. I think it's better for aggressive decks. If you're not because you're too scared of Xenocluster, you don't want to go down to the top play pattern and be able to enter burn your opponent, then this is another option that you can use that's just a flexible side option to ensure that you're like, I'm going to be aggressive. If you try to freeze me with twinning, spinning, and if you try to mess up my hand with random drain, just not going to work. So I would consider this for aggro and mid-range strategies, probably not control strategies. Or you can even play it in potential future combo decks, because it unlike this, will do the job of stopping something from coming your way and maybe wrecking a key Signy. So that's all of our pieces, guys. Again, all of these are pretty much overshadowed by Xenocluster. I would say this is probably one of the chase cards of the set. If you're going to pick up something, probably try to pick one of these up. And then share it between your decks if you don't have multiples. Without any further ado, guys, that is the Life Burst podcast. If you guys want to hear more reviews, my thoughts on the sets, different ideas for the metagame, dream teams, deck lists, sample deck lists, go ahead and subscribe. If not, it was great having you here. I wish you would subscribe, though. And for those people who actually made it to the end of all of the set reviews, comment down below. I really want to know what your favorite card of the entire set is. Doesn't have to be the pieces, just any set, any card on the set. I think if I was going to pick one, I really like Royal Blue, and that's clearly my Uchu showing. I think Royal Blue is kind of a cool card. I don't think it's particularly super, super strong, but I like it. All right, and with that, guys, may you always flip a Life Burst. See ya!